everyone, my name's Natalie and welcome to my channel. I'm a hand lettering artist and in this video I'm going to be focusing on the amazing world of hand lettering. So whether you're a beginner or you're looking to refine your skills, this video is going to be the starting point for better understanding the essential tools and materials that are needed for hand lettering. So let's get started. So to start off, hand lettering can be done digitally or traditionally. So let's get started on the digital tools. I love using Adobe Fresco and Procreate on my iPad. It's a fantastic tool for hand lettering because it offers a variety of brushes and colors and it's very user-friendly. Plus, the ability to undo and work in layers is a game changer. To be honest, I'm primarily an Adobe Fresco user. It's my go-to drawing app since it works seamlessly with other Adobe apps like Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop. When it comes to traditional hand lettering, the tools you use can greatly impact your work. Here are some of my favorites. So I love the Bear and Fig notebooks. They come in dotted line or blank, so I prefer just using the regular blank notebook. And I also love Blackwing pencils. So this is a confidant hardcover notebook with blank paper, and there's also 3 sizes you can choose from. I normally suggest regular basic pieces of paper and basic pencils for beginners, but if you're looking for something of higher quality, this is a great notebook to start with. So if you don't want to use regular generic pencils or lead pencils, I recommend the Blackwing pencils. They're higher quality, they are on the pricier end, but they are definitely worth it. You can choose the style of pencil. Some of their pencils have a soft feel to them or a more firm feel. You can choose what you like. Plus, Blackwing creates some pretty cool accessories for their pencils, like an extender and tip protector. And of course, if you are doing some pencil lettering, I recommend grabbing a ruler for guides and an eraser. The eraser that I like to use is the High Polymer Eraser by Pentel. It's an affordable eraser that works really well. Now let's talk about digital tools and why they are my go-to choices. This is Adobe Fresco, my go-to drawing app. I primarily draw and design in Adobe Fresco with pixel brushes or vector brushes. I create art for brands, so sometimes I need to create art that is scalable, which is why using vector brushes in Adobe Fresco is a game changer. I can actually export my designs if I use vector brushes into an Adobe Illustrator file and continue my work either on the iPad or the desktop application of Adobe Illustrator. Let me show you guys some basic strokes you can practice in Adobe Fresco and some of my favorite brushes as well. So whenever I work in Adobe Fresco, I like to work with a grid. So I'll go ahead and click on the grid and turn it on. And I can also adjust the settings for my grid. So for example, I can adjust the opacity of my grid. I can make it really light or dark. I can adjust the spacing or the size of my grid. And finally, I can also adjust the color of my grid. I like to leave it just gray. And so that's how I set up my canvas whenever I'm doing illustration or lettering. Now for my favorite brushes, one of the first brushes is a pixel brush under sketching. I love to use the pencil brush. So this is just a regular pencil brush in Adobe Fresco. You can actually click on the star to favorite it. And if you do favorite any of these brushes, if you go to the favorites tab at the top, you can easily access your favorite brushes, which makes it really easy to grab some of the brushes that you use all the time. And then the bottom left-hand corner, this is where we're gonna have our brush settings. We can increase or decrease the size of a brush. So you can see the size here. We can increase or decrease the flow. So you can see this is very light, or I can make it darker flow, as you can see here. We can also adjust the smoothing of the brush, so we can make it look really smooth or really jagged, just depending on the smoothness. So here the smoothness is really low. Now if I increase it to be really high, you can see it makes my lines much more smoother. So this is very similar to Procreate's stabilization. And then now there's also the paint inside tool. So if I draw a perfect circle here by holding down, I can tap on the paint inside tool here, and then I can start painting or drawing inside of the circle here. So it'll automatically make sure that my drawing is within the lines. So that is the paint inside tool. Make sure to turn it off in case you're not using it. And you can see here, now it's off. And then lastly, there's more brush settings, but I just like to leave it as is, especially with Fresco brushes that Adobe has launched. I feel like they've already set up the settings for success, so I just like to leave it as is. Another brush that I really like to use are vector brushes. So like I said before, when you draw with vector brushes, you can actually export your designs to Adobe Illustrator on your desktop or the iPad, which is pretty amazing because all of your art can be scaled to be very large or very small pieces. Vector art is amazing, especially for a lot of brands. Brands love vector art because they can place it on all types of products. So with the vector brush, you can see they're going to look very, very simple. There's less options for vector brushes because obviously vectors have to have very, very simple lines. You're not going to find brushes with super, super intricate detail. As you can see here, there's several brushes you can choose from. I can choose from the jitter. And if I increase the brush size here, you can see how it looks. Let me increase the size. You can see a little bit more detail. Now, if you notice on the right side, there are 2 layers. When I start drawing with my vector brushes, it automatically created a new layer. The reason that is because vector brushes cannot be combined with pixel brushes. Vector and pixel graphics represent 2 fundamentally different approaches to creating and managing images, each with its own strengths and limitations. So pixel graphics are usually composed of a fixed grid of pixels. Each pixel has its own color value, making its format ideal for complex images with continuous color variations. This is great for photographs, detailed images, and textures with subtle gradients. Vector graphics are based on mathematical equations and geometric primitives such as points, lines, curves, and shapes. They're resolution independent, meaning they can be scaled to any size without loss of quality. So this is great for logos, icons, typography, and any graphics that require scaling to different sizes. So another brush that I like to use are actually the live brushes, and live brushes are still categorized under pixel brushes. These are not going to be vector formats. So live brushes are slightly different from the pixel brushes. They are going to try to emulate real life painting. So if I select the watercolor here, I'll just draw on my canvas to show you how this works. And as I'm drawing, it's actually combining with my sketch, so with my other pixel layer. And you can see they start blending together. This is giving me that real life painting feel. If I add another color, I can blend the two. So this is giving me that more realistic approach to painting on a canvas. So live brushes is very special to Adobe Fresco. You're not going to find these types of brushes in other drawing apps. So let's jump into some exercises for lettering and some strokes that I recommend for all you lettering enthusiasts. To get started, I like to work with a regular pixel brush, so I'll go to my pixel icon here, and I'll make sure I click on it, and I'll go down to the sketching brushes and select pencil. This is already selected, and I'll select the color black to start sketching. Lastly, I'll adjust the smoothing of my brush, making it a little bit on the lower side. I want to have it have that more realistic feel as I'm sketching. I don't want too much help from Procreate or Fresco, whatever app I'm using. I don't want too much help from the application. It's just easier for me because I feel like it helps me to practice a bit more if I have the smoothing set to pretty low. Now, one of the exercises that I love to do that has helped me throughout my career are just some simple strokes that help me to have a steady hand. These are very helpful whenever you're doing live lettering events or murals. This is going to be essential if you want very smooth lines as you draw. So the first exercise is just going up and down at an angle, these nice curves. Again, this type of practice makes it really easy for me to practice my steady hand, making sure my hand's not shaky. So I recommend trying this on paper or your tablet, wherever you're working. It's a great exercise. Another one you can do is just straight up and down, so not on an angle. You can go up and down by creating these curves. So for me, I love doing these exercises. They're really quick, really easy to do. So I'll just kind of do them over and over, depending on where I'm working. It's just really, really quick, practice. I can increase the smoothing as well, just to kind of see how it would look if it was ultra smooth. So this is a great exercise to practice the diagonal or the up and down. And if I decrease the smoothing once again, I'll show you guys how this would look if I make them a little bit smaller. So making sure I have my brush selected. I'm just going to go up and down and just using a smaller grid at this point. Obviously, if I'm drawing larger, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. And just remember, if you're drawing sideways with your Apple Pencil, this is the brush that you're going to get. And straightforward, you're going to get the point of the pencil. So keep in mind, the way you're using the brush is going to change the appearance. And a third exercise is doing these loops, going over and over and over diagonally. I love this exercise as well. And if I increase the smoothness, you can see it's going to look much different. It's going to make it just easier for me to create those smooth and perfect loops. Obviously, I had to undo and redo until I liked the way it looked. So these are some exercises I highly recommend doing, especially if you want to do lettering. And if you plan on doing live lettering events, these are going to help you. Trust me, they've helped me. Now let's create a new layer on the right side by clicking the plus sign, and we'll go ahead and hide our exercises, and we'll go to this new layer, and I'm going to show you guys my methodology for creating hand lettering. So this is not any special type of stroke. I'm just going to be using rectangles and geometric shapes to build my letters, and let me show you guys how it's done. Go to the bottom right hand corner and you can select some drawing aids. We have a ruler, circle, square, and polygon. I'm going to go ahead and select the ruler. These are just aids to help us draw quickly some shapes on the canvas. Obviously, the ruler is going to help us draw some straight lines. So all I'm going to do here is I'm just going to create a rectangle with my ruler, creating some vertical lines and then rotating my ruler to create that horizontal line for my rectangle. So now that I have my rectangle, I'm going to tell you guys, we're going to make the letter B. So all I'm going to do is click on these three dots and select duplicate layer, and grabbing the transform tool, I'm going to rotate my rectangle, put it at the top for my B, and then squish it on in. Again, I'm going to duplicate this layer again, and with the transform tool, I'll bring it to the middle for the middle of my B, and I'll duplicate again and bring it down below for the bottom of my B. Then I'll just select those middle lines and make sure they're a little bit more centered, and I'll thin out the box as well. So I'm just skewing these boxes. The next step is to create the round portions of our B. So all I'm going to do now is create a new layer on the right side because I'm going to be using a circle. So I'll draw a circle on my canvas and hold down to create a perfect circle. And with the transform tool, I'll just place it on my shapes to see where I want that top portion of my B to be placed. I'll duplicate that layer, and then I'll decrease the size here to make sure I set up that loop right in the middle of my B and this round portion of my B. So now that I have the top portion, I need to add the bottom round portion of the B. I'll duplicate these circles again, and I'll bring it down to the bottom. For this bottom portion of the B, I want it to be a little bit further outwards because I want the bottom to be a little bit larger, and I'll duplicate it again to make that smaller portion of the B as well, so that round inner portion of the B. So now that that's done, you can see all I did was use shapes to create the letter B. So this is my methodology for creating hand lettering, whether it be on paper or the tablets. This is how I do hand lettering, and I think it's really easy. And then I'll go ahead and combine all of these layers by dragging them on top of each other. So just drag and pull on top of the next layer below, drag and pull on top of the next layer below, and then select the three dots and click on merge all. Last but not least, I'm just going to erase some portions of my skeleton B that I don't need. So I'll grab the eraser and erase this bottom portion of the B and this top portion because this is not going to be filled in. And then I just want to color in my B to have a better view for how this looks. I'll just use the paint bucket tool and just fill in quickly some of these areas. Obviously, it doesn't look completely filled in, so I'll go ahead and just grab my pencil and continue filling in some of these areas just to get a better idea for how this B looks overall. So I've sped up through this process, but the next step is to remove the grid to kind of see what my letter looks like. This is the sketched phase. And now I want to create my final letter. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure my layer is selected, and I'll reduce the opacity of that. And then I'll create a new layer above that to create my final letter B. I'm going to go ahead and use a vector brush for this. So go to my brushes and just make sure I'm selecting a basic brush. That way the line is just overall a smooth brush. And I'll go ahead, use my ruler, and trace all the vertical lines of my B and then all of the horizontal lines of my B. And just making sure my ruler is at 0%. I've gone ahead and sped up this process, just tracing all the horizontal lines. Next up is the curves of my B. I can just freehand it and use my brush to kind of follow the curves, follow my sketch. You can also use your drawing aid for the curves. So I can actually rotate my B and grab my circle drawing aid here and place my circle on my canvas. Once I've placed it in a good spot, I'll go ahead and trace the curve along my guide, and I'll do the same thing for the bottom using this drawing aid, and I'll just trace that circle. And once that's done, I'll just connect these portions here, the curve and my straight line of my B. So I'm just freehanding it here. So that is my letter B. I'll go ahead and rotate it back, and you can see we have our B, and what's left to do is just fill. And with the paint bucket, I can easily just fill in my B. And last but not least, I'll just use the eraser to fix up some of the edges on my letter. So this is how I create letters using geometric shapes. All I used was rectangles and circles. I hope this was helpful and you guys can use this methodology as well. There are countless ways to learn hand lettering, and I've listed some of my favorite resources in the description below. I've also included a link to some of my favorite hand lettering worksheets that I've created in case you guys are looking into practicing some hand lettering. Now remember, the best way to improve is to practice consistently and experiment with different tools to see what works best for you. I would love to see your guys' progress, so feel free to send over your work, and if you guys have any questions at all, feel free to reach out. I'm here to help. Now stay tuned for my next video where we're going to be learning how to create your first hand lettered quote using Adobe Fresco. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell, and I'll see you guys on the next video.